Donovan Mitchell is in rumors, which I suspected during the beginning of the season. I didn't think it would be this soon. I didn't think I'd be hearing Mitchell at the deadline necessarily, but here we are. The Cleveland Cavaliers have been off to a disappointing start. Darius Garland and Evan Mobley are out for a long time, and the Cavs are kind of stuck. And Donovan Mitchell has not guaranteed an extension with them. He has not signed an extension at this point, and has been heavily reported that he will not. Cleveland was not on his original trade list. So now he's got the New York Knicks, the Miami Heat, the Brooklyn Nets, as well as several other teams that are probably going to be interested on him. Dan, I ask you, as a Knick fan, are you interested in having Donovan Mitchell on your team, specifically after his first round playoff performance and kind of he doesn't have a real history, even with pretty good teams, of going past the second round? Would you want Donovan Mitchell on your team?
I think the answer is yes. I do want Donovan Mitchell on this team because I think he is a phenomenal player. I think if you look at his numbers this season so far, he's averaging 27 points per game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 45% from the field, shooting 35 from three. Even if you look at his playoff numbers, I think even though he had a really bad playoff last year, got outplayed by Jalen Brunson, I think on this team, playing alongside Jalen Brunson, who's proven to be an all-star caliber player in this league, someone you can rely on, someone who's steady, who doesn't get the moment never becomes too big for him. Randall, obviously, he has his issues. I know Knicks fans are adamant about, what we don't like about Julius Randle. But at the end of the day, when he's on, he's on. He's a 25 point per game scorer, 10, 11 rebounds a game, leading our team in assists. You pair those two players with someone like Donovan Mitchell of his caliber, someone who could put up 25, 30, 35, 40. We saw him have a 70-point game last season. You put that together with the defensive mindset of Tibbs and, the identity of the team, I think you put a formula of someone that can really improve our team and make us win. And the deal wouldn't really exhaust the Knicks of all their assets. They'd still be able to possibly make a move for a superstar caliber player in the future, whether that be Embiid or someone of that caliber. I think it's a good idea for the Knicks. The Knicks are obviously starving for a superstar, and it's very clear that this team is kind of capped. At best, we are a second round exit. They need to do something. I think this is a layup for them. Donovan Mitchell wants to be here. He's wanted to be here from the get-go when he requested a trade from Utah. I think you try to get this done if you're Leon Rose in the Knicks front office.
So I think we had a discussion on your pod the last time I was on there. We talked about DeMar DeRozan, and specifically we talked about his fit with the Knicks. And in that, I basically said, I kind of talked myself into it as we discussed it, is DeMar DeRozan would have been kind of like a backup plan for Julius Randle. If you take that big three of Jalen Brunson, DeMar DeRozan, Julius Randle, and then if Randle plays poor in the playoffs, it allows you to stomach possibly trading Randle for not in crazy good pieces, because you have DeRozan on your roster. Mitchell is basically that, but 10 times better. Donovan Mitchell is much younger than DeMar DeRozan. He is a better player than DeMar DeRozan. And most people, and I think DeRozan has yet to really prove if he can contribute to championship level basketball. I don't think it's a secret. Like, I think Donovan Mitchell, that's never been the question with him. He's a winning player to me. He's won as soon as he got into the league as a rookie. And his style of basketball, I think, has a better recipe for success, considering that he can score at elite level at basically at all points, is an explosive burst. He's not like the best defender, but definitely he can, because of his athleticism, he can definitely not do bad. I just think his size kind of, puts him down. This guy's been well coached by, Rick Pitino guy, like this guy's knows his stuff. I think Knicks fans would adore Donovan Mitchell playing at Madison Square Garden, and it would distract them. Because honestly, let's face it, man, Yeah, they need a superstar. And the casual NBA fan knows that Donovan Mitchell is not a superstar. But does the Nick fan know that? Because they love calling Jalen Brunson a superstar. My whole point is if you pair Jalen Brunson with Donovan Mitchell and you still have Mitchell Robinson, you still have Tibbs there, you still have some depth pieces, right? You still have good players on the team. Like, I don't think Knicks fans care at that point. And as long as you maintain flexibility to trade for that number one guy, then I think it's the right move. To me, Mitchell, and I'm going to ask you about this. Do you think, in my opinion, in order for Cleveland to get a good return with Donovan Mitchell, they have to trade him to a team that he's going to extend with? And the teams that he's going to extend with are the Nets, the Knicks, and Miami, because those were his preferred destinations. And I said this on your pod. I'm not taking Miami seriously because they haven't proven to me why I should take them seriously in trade talks, considering after we just watched Dame. So I think if he is traded, and I think it's inevitable at this point, considering the situation where Cleveland's at, I think it's to the Nets or the Knicks. And I said this on your pod. I think it's whoever wants him the most. I really do think that. Now, I'm asking you as a Knicks fan, do you want him? You obviously do, but at what price?
Yeah, that's the big question. And I think you're right that a big part of this of where he goes will be will he resign there? Because if you're a team looking to trade for Donovan Mitchell and you say, oh, he'd be great on this team, like for example, the Thunder, who could definitely get a trade done if they wanted to. Is he going to want to stay there? He only has 1 year left in his contract after this season, and then he can become a free agent and he can go to the Knicks anyway. So that's something you have to definitely factor in if you're a team outside of the three you just named, if they want to trade for him, like if the Lakers wanted to for some reason, or Orlando or the Thunder. So I agree with you. I don't take Miami seriously with trade talks. Every free agent comes up and like, oh, he could go to Miami. It'd be a great destination. They just, for whatever reason, Pat Riley, they just don't get it done. They're just never willing to part with the things they would need to, the players that they would need to get it done. So it becomes a two-team race. It becomes the Knicks and the Nets. Both play New York. It's both where it's where Donovan Mitchell wants to be, and it's just whoever's willing to part with the pieces that they have. The Nets have the Suns picks. They also have Cam Thomas. I'm sure he'd be a player the Cavaliers would love. He fits their timeline. He's a young player, and he is a dynamic scorer we saw last night on Saturday night against the Warriors. The Knicks have a flurry of picks as well. Some are protected, so they're not as valuable as maybe those Suns picks. But we have RJ Barrett, we have Quentin Grimes, we also have Josh Hart, Emmanuel Quickly, who we did not extend. So he is someone we could possibly see moved because he could walk at the end of the season anyway. He is a restricted free agent, so we would have a chance to extend a qualifying offer. But if he's playing the way we've seen him play the past 2 seasons, it's going to be a big contract. I'm not sure if the Knicks will want to commit that much money to Emmanuel Quickly, especially if they don't see him as more than a 6-man of the year, candidate. So I think the Knicks, you're going to have to be willing to part with RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett's in his 5th year. He's a 20-point per game scorer, but at this point, we haven't seen the growth that I think we would have loved to see from him. And that's, especially from shooting from the field, his finishing at the rim, he still just goes left every time. And if you're able to take him out of his rhythm, keep him away from the basket, he's not as effective. So the Knicks, I think, are going to be more willing to make this deal because I think they want Donovan Mitchell more. And I think they're not as attached to these pieces. Quentin Grimes is coming off our bench now. That's someone you could easily part with. And he's just a shooter, not giving you a bunch of scoring. He does give you defense. I think that's someone you could easily replace. And then RJ Barrett, he has his contract. He's 2 years in, I believe, into his rookie extension. I think you part with him. I think the Knicks could definitely do that. And as long as they, as you mentioned, they have the flexibility to still move later on. You still have Randall, who I think eventually they're going to have to move if they really want to be a title contender. That's something you can stomach. And I think it's a great idea. I think they should definitely do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they have avenues to go for it with the trade. I haven't done the trade machine, so I don't know if it's 100% if the contracts line up completely.
Yeah.
But I know Quickly is set to be a restricted free agent, correct?
Yes.
So he's expecting a big payday. So I wonder if, because I know like on paper, let's just say the New York Knicks trade RJ Barrett Quentin Grimes, Emmanuel Quickly. But since Quickly's in the deal, instead of maybe 3 first-round picks, you're only giving up 2. Do you do that? Because you don't have to worry about paying Quickly anymore. For a guy who played 19 minutes the other day, and Jalen Brunson plays a ton of minutes, and Quickly
Yeah.
can only play 2 positions. And if Mitchell and Brunson are there, you know Tibbs is going to play those guys. So how valuable is Quickly to that roster at that point? So I think Knicks fans kind of they cringe at the idea of like, wow, that's a lot. We like Barrett. We like, even though Barrett's kind of been, he's RJ Barrett. He's kind of
Yeah.
just giving you this RJ Barrett production. It's like he shows flashes, but he's RJ Barrett. He is what he is at this point. It's year 5. Um, but some people, he played awful to start the playoffs, and then he had some really good games. So, he's player I think Knicks fans really attach themselves to. I think Grimes, no brainer, right? Obviously, you don't care about that, but Grimes, and Quickly and Barrett allows you to still kind of keep some draft capital. And that's very important because that allows you to be in the hunt for a number 1 option.
I think there's going to be definitely Knicks fans that look at a trade like that, RJ, Quentin, and Quickly, and immediately they just be like, that's too much.
Yeah.
But everything you said, it makes sense. I think the front office already made their decision on Emmanuel Quickly. They didn't want to re-sign him when they could have. Throughout the entire offseason, they had up until like September, like 23rd or something before the season started. They didn't do it. And the fact that he's, whether it's Tibbs or the front office that think this way, or if they all think this way, they don't see him as more than a 6th man, even though I think he can be more. I think he's a starting caliber guard in this league on both ends of the floor. They don't see him that way. They don't value him like that. And it's clear. And it makes sense. You got Brunson playing all those minutes at point guard, and you don't want to go super small, have Quickly at the shooting guard. They like playing RJ Barrett at shooting guard. I think that's, you can easily move that. Whether Cleveland wants someone who's going to become a restricted free agent is up to them. It allows them to re-sign him, and they have someone that could play alongside Garland. I think he would fit well alongside Garland because Garland can score, but he's more of a playmaker, more of a facilitator, running that pick and roll. I think Mayo quickly gives him someone sort of like Karis LeVert, who just instant offense the second you give it to him, and he can also play some defense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. RJ Barrett, I understand the attachment. The first draft pick that we have that we re-signed to a rookie extension, since like, I forget what his name was, in 1999, like when we were born. Like the first rookie we actually extended, gave him another contract. Then we gave it to Mitch as well.
Yeah.
I understand the attachment. We're kind of waiting for this all-star talent to come out. You see flashes of it, but like you mentioned, it's year 5. I think when you have someone like Donovan Mitchell, who's a proven star in this league, you know what you're going to get from him every night. I think you got to let go of that. You got to make the moves. And all Knicks fans are clamoring for a star. We're kind of bored, frustrated with seeing the same thing pretty much as last season, maybe not as well. Our defense has been terrible the past like 2 weeks, and we're just not, we're not a high scoring team. I think you got to just, you got to make the deal. Deals like this don't come around often. Stars don't become available this often. And you got to take your opportunities when they come, and then you live with the results. It's a gamble. That's what it is. Yeah. Trading for these stars. And I think if you're able to keep draft capital, which is also valuable, you could use it again for a trade later on, and you could pair Jalen Brunson with Donovan Mitchell and Julius Randle. I don't know if you want to call that a big 3 or not. That's 3 all-star caliber players. I guess it is. But you put that with Mitch and, the pieces we have at the bench, DiVincenzo and stuff like that, you have a really good team that can really compete. I think you got to do it if it, becomes available.
Let's switch over to the Nets, which is the other team in this. And this is why I know Knicks fans don't want to hear this, but to me, it's no question that the Nets can offer a better trade package for Donovan Mitchell. And it's only going to be up, like I said before, it's what team wants him the most. Is Brooklyn going to offer more first-round picks than the Knicks? They may feel like they don't need to offer as many firsts because they believe they have the better player, which would be traded, which is Cam Thomas, which I think is just the coincidentally, like he has to be the guy because Mitchell and Cam Thomas on the same team kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. The Nets would probably have to throw in another pick because Ben Simmons would have to be in the trade, I believe, because his rookie extension contract, and there's a rule, he has to be in the deal. Mitchell and Simmons cannot be on the same team. So because of that, although Simmons's contract is very valuable going into the summer, because he will be a $42 million expiring contract. So you may not be able, you may not have to do that. Maybe if you're Brooklyn, you're like, hey, we don't want to make this move at the deadline. If we want to see how this goes and maybe make this move in the offseason. And my question is, does Cleveland trade Mitchell at the deadline? I'm not really sure. Maybe they feel like, hey, listen, we think we can get a better trade in the offseason, but historically speaking, like Brooklyn waited to the trade deadline to trade Kevin Durant. I think a lot of that was more they just wanted to get those guys back on the floor again to see how if they could still recalibrate some magic, and it was working for a while until Kyrie ruined it. But there was also this like with Lillard too, like the months for that. There was no trade for a while. Everything just kind of stopped, and then right before training camp happened, that's when it happened. It's going to be interesting to find out. What do you think happens? Do you think it's an off-season move or do you think it's a deadline move?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because if Cleveland is of the mindset that, you know what, with what we got right now, if they could kind of stay in the mix a little in the playing area of the East, just with Donovan Mitchell, if we could do that and hold out until Garland and Mobley come back, and then maybe see we can make a little run and still make the playoffs. If they're of that mindset, then it makes sense that they would wait, especially since Donovan Mitchell still has that last year
Mm-hmm.
on the contract. And then in the offseason, it's likely you have more suitors than you would at the deadline. The deadline, you kind of get teams that are a little more desperate that are trying to do something for this season. In
Mm-hmm.
the offseason, you have teams that, are looking at their roster. If they're not able to sign whoever they want, or, they want something extra to jolt the team, and you give a whole season with Donovan Mitchell instead of just a half. That's, I think, an interesting part of it. And it's interesting you mentioned Simmons because I completely forgot he's even on the Nets, to be honest.
I don't blame
Uh,
you.
that you mentioned that the Nets would probably eventually have to move him just
Yes.
because what is he giving you at this point?
Well, he also just doesn't fit anything that
That's
they're
true.
doing, and it's just doesn't necessarily. I know his age. I get it. It's very similar to Mikal Bridges, and he does not fit um anything for what they're going forward in. He doesn't, he's Ben Simmons. And honestly, I believe he's unfortunately, I think he's done. I just think it's sad, but he tried to hype up again in the offseason. And he came back, he looked healthier, but he didn't look great. And I knew that he hurt his back. I knew it when I saw it. I remember the exact play. And I knew as soon as that happened, I knew he didn't had no explosiveness for the rest of the game. He had no burst. And I knew he was cooked right there. And I think if you're trading for him, you're trading for just the expiring. And I think that's why you're doing it. Because that's a very valuable expiring contract.
Yeah, it'd be whether Cleveland would even take on Simmons. I think it's an interesting
Well,
question.
he has to be in the trade
Oh yeah,
because
so they'd have to.
so
They'd have to
so
be
that's another
included.
thing. So maybe they don't even want him, but he is valuable from that perspective, and that's if it's an off-season move. Um, I mean, you could do it at the deadline, but I think they may want another pick. But I just think with the Nets, like if I'm Cleveland, and I said this on your pod, if I'm Cleveland, the guy I want, if I have to trade this guy, is Cam Thomas. He basically provides what Donovan Mitchell is providing. Obviously, not as good, but basically does. And he's at an age where he actually fits my timeline of young talent like Evan Mobley and Darius Garland. He's 22 years old. And that's why the Brooklyn Nets fan base is completely torn on this. Like they have no idea because right now, like they're coming off a bad loss versus Golden State, but they came off a very encouraging win versus Phoenix, which was a big morale boost for the franchise, especially after Kevin Durant had left. I reacted to it. I know I was in euphoria. I was just
Hmm.
going crazy. But the problem is, like, if you have a chance to get Donovan Mitchell, who could be a future Hall of Famer when all is said and done, still young. Like, he's also 27. He's Mikal Bridges' age. So if you plan on winning with Mikal Bridges, I think Donovan Mitchell can be a second guy on a championship team. And the Nets would still have assets to get a number one guy. And it comes down to if Sean Marks wants to do that again, or he sees Cam Thomas's numbers right now. We'll see if he still sticks with them, but I have no reason to believe Cam Thomas is going to dip. He's been really good and consistent. I would still like to see maybe sometimes him shoot the ball a little bit better. But if you look at the numbers between I believe Mitchell's rookie season or at least when they were both the same age of 22, they're not that different with the stats. In fact, Cam Thomas is averaging more points. So obviously less games played, but still, like, there's some things that are better for Mitchell and there's some things that are better for Thomas, and Thomas is 22. So it's like, if you're Brooklyn, are you just like, okay, maybe we're okay with just keeping and sitting on these golden picks that we have from Phoenix? They still have a golden one in Dallas, I believe. I don't think Luka's going to be on the team in 2029. I know it looks good now, but I still think I just am going with the tradition that Kyrie is going to do something and Luka will not be on the team in 2029. And I'm holding out hope for that, but I think that's a real possibility, and that's a pick that's very valuable as well. So I mentioned this. I would be more comfortable giving up my own picks, even if I'm the Nets, more than those Phoenix picks, because I think those Phoenix picks are gold. So if you're the Nets, are you cool with being like, there's nothing wrong with being a good perennial playoff team for like a decade and drafting a few years from now? There's nothing really wrong with that, but there's also the intriguing aspect of like, hey, let's get Donovan Mitchell here. We'll definitely be a top five team in the East at that point because you get like your clear number one guy there. And then you have the picks to trade for, I don't know if Joel's unhappy. We talked about that for the Knicks as well. Um, that's a good big three if you can make that happen, and you have Claxton, you have guys that can make that work in a deal, and you have enticing picks, and you could bring Mitchell, Embiid, and Bridges together. That's a big three. I know we talk about big threes, how they don't really work anymore, but I think you have to take that team seriously because of how well they fit. And same with the Knicks, like Brunson, Mitchell, and Embiid. That's another one you got to take seriously because Embiid's never played with anybody like Donovan Mitchell. He's never played with anybody like Jalen Brunson. And for someone who is that aggressive of a scorer in crunch time and with that mentality, he's played with Ben Simmons and James Harden, two notable playoff floppers. And that's not what Donovan Mitchell is, and that's not what Jalen Brunson is. And I think Mikal Bridges is a good third option. But go ahead.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's
Yeah.
just going to come down to who's willing to give up what and what Cleveland exactly wants. If they want players they could play now, or if they want
Mhm.
picks that they can use in the future.
See, like, that's another thing too. It's like, if you're Cleveland, what do you want? Do you want a Cam Thomas, a guy that you could basically get Mitchell for again, or do you want more good players? Like, because if you take Ben Simmons on, you're expecting him to do nothing really for your team. But if you take the Knicks offer, then you get some draft picks from the Knicks, and then you get Emmanuel Quickly, who's a good player. You get RJ Barrett, who's a good player. You get Quentin Grimes, who has good potential to be a good player. He's started in this league, and you put those guys with Evan Mobley, Darius Garland. You could probably trade Jaron Allen for some value because we talked about on your pod that Mobley and Allen, that fit, it just doesn't work. It's just a huge reason why they've kind of been stuck. So it stunts Mobley's development possibly. So you put that along with Max Struess, maybe Karras, who knows? Like, more good players on the Knicks. Barrett's a wing. Like, they need a good three. I mean, Struess has been good for them, but like RJ Barrett is definitely like something they would need. And Quickly is someone they would need bench scoring. And Grimes a young defensive minded player, which is what they would need with Garland. So it's very interesting. And like we said, it's gonna come down. I don't have an answer for you. I don't have an answer for you. You don't have really an answer unless do you want to say, do you think what do you think he is? Do you think he's a Nick or a net? Because honestly, like, the more I'm talking about it, I think the Knicks would get him, but only because the Nets would be hesitant to give up that much.
Yeah, I think 100%.
That's
Especially,
that's that's
yeah,
my final discussion. But it's not because necessarily they can't do it or anything, or that he wouldn't want to go there. It's just the Knicks he also wants to go to. And I think the Knicks really wanted. The Knicks have been putting it out in the tea leaves. They've been leaking it to reporters like, we want to trade for a star. If Donovan Mitchell's available at the trade deadline, we're going to be interested.
yeah, 100% agree.